Bellying up to the 9-foot homemade oak bar, my name is Craig Toth, your host of Minor League News and Brews, talking about everything around the Pirates minor league system and giving you some beer reviews at the end of the show. If you're listening to this, and especially if you're a regular listener, you know that this is coming to you a little bit later than normal. Most of the times it comes out first thing Saturday morning. Recording this on Saturday afternoon. That's just what happens when life throws you a couple curveballs, especially a kiddo who has been sick since Tuesday while working the regular gig and doing some other stuff throughout the week. So this is just coming to you a little bit later, but definitely still wanted to get it out to you. If you look at the title of this one, it is Piquing My Interest. That would be something that I have done in my time when I was a blogger. I mean, I didn't stop being a blogger all that long ago, but it's been a while since I wrote these articles. Usually around January, February each year, I would do a list of the top 5 Pirates prospects that were piquing my interest, would usually spell it with the P-E-A-K, and would be pointed out that that was incorrect. It was not the right usage of the word. It's actually the other piquing. But I also explained that it was a play on words. But this time, just to kind of avoid those little DMs out to me and comments and different stuff, I will spell it the correct way. Before I get started, though, on that, I did want to go over some things that, once again, people had put in my DMs, some stuff that was reached out about. The first thing happened not too long after the last episode came out, where I was talking about the international prospects that had been signed. Ethan Houlihan, if you don't follow Ethan, you absolutely should. His stuff on the rules. I think he just put something out on the PPI, the people who are listed within the top 100 prospects, if they are elevated on opening day and stay there the whole season and, get in a certain ranking within the awards, then, you get that comp pick the next year, something we've already seen happen. Also, his payroll is spot on throughout the off season and going into the season throughout there. Just the little things, if that's something that interests you, you should absolutely follow him. He's a guy I reach out to all the time, but he came to me and said that there were, some players that actually had been signed and given bonuses after the episode had released. A lot of that stuff was on the Bucs on deck. Anthony Murphy, another person you absolutely have to follow, especially concerning the minor leagues, reading the Bucs on deck, that some of those bonuses had been handed out. So everybody that wants to, go ahead, please check those out. Those guys have the most up-to-date stuff. It just happened that I had recorded about an hour or so before that became public knowledge. Another thing that happened within the past couple days is that the farm system rankings had come out. ESPN, Kylie McDaniel, Baseball America, and to many Pirates fans' disappointment, in Baseball America, the Pirates were ranked as the 12th best farm system, with the Brewers coming in second on that list, the Cubs at 4, the Reds at 11, and the Cards, the only ones behind the Pirates, at 20. ESPN, they were 14th. The Cubs came in at 2nd, the Brewers at 5th, the Reds at 10th, and the Cards at 18th. This is something that is definitely disappointing. I don't want to sugarcoat that. Obviously, you want to have, the Pirates stay in that top 5, maybe, even in the top 2, especially when a team like the Baltimore Orioles, 101 wins last year, and they still have the top farm system, just because, it is just an absolutely stacked system, which kind of goes into the second thing that I had been kind of asked to discuss a little bit, and that was the Corbin Burnes trade to the Orioles. Definitely happy that Corbin Burnes is out of the NL Central, has given the Pirates fits, but a lot of this was based on what people saw as a the Orioles pulled one over on the Brewers, that it was a meh return, that they could have seen, the Orioles give up more or the Brewers get more for, former Cy Young winner, but is a guy who is only on his last year of arbitration here, more than likely will be heading to free agency after this season. Don't really see him, locking up to a long-term deal with the Orioles. If that happened, I would be extremely surprised. But the bigger part was that, along with the comp pick, I believe it's the 34th pick overall in this year's draft, which was a fairly, smart move by the Brewers if they were going to trade him to be able to get one of those comp picks. Because if they would have waited till after this season, extended the qualifying offer, they would have gotten, a comp pick as well if somebody, would have signed him after that, which somebody will sign him, so they would get that if they extended that qualifying offer. So, getting that back, but then also getting, two guys that are, and in some cases were, top 100 prospects on different rankings, different sites, MLB ready. And I did see some stuff out there as trading for a reliever and a utility infielder. For one thing, DL Hall, the pitcher that the Brewers got back, is a guy who was used as a reliever for the Orioles last season, towards the end of the season, and into the playoffs, but that was more out of a necessity due to injury, due to arms wearing out. Has been a starter throughout his minor league career, and even last year, in 2 levels, he had 12 starts and 19 appearances. Usually kind of does that even the year before, 20 starts and 24 appearances. And the Brewers had room, especially giving up Burnes, had room and have room in that rotation to kind of stretch him out. The Orioles, especially in acquiring Burnes, and then the other players that would be, had started last year and were performing well, he really didn't have a spot in that rotation. So, good on the Orioles for going for it this season, getting Corbin Burnes, realizing that, Hall could have a spot in future years, but really wasn't going to have a place this year, barring some sort of injuries. Definitely do have other pitchers who are on the cusp. But, when people call him a reliever, yes, he was used as a reliever, but that is something you see with top prospects when they are brought up at first. It's not something, the Pirates, we've seen with them, with like a Quinn Priester, even Roansy the year before, Luis Ortiz, even though Rowe did go into the bullpen kind of just be out of ineffectiveness this past season. But I mean, a team that's going for it, you're going to have all arms on deck, and especially with injuries, I look for the Brewers to kind of stretch him out and get him and have him as a part of the rotation. Pitched pretty well in the minors last year, a 3.98 ERA, a 1.37 WHIP, a little bit high. Was having some issues with control with the walks and stuff. If you can get that under wraps a little bit, I mean, could be a very good pickup for the Brewers and a guy that could slot right into the rotation this year. And the second player, the one that was referred to as the utility infielder, another guy you see in the top 100 prospect lists. He came up and only had 33 at-bats for the Orioles. Obviously struggled in those at-bats. Didn't, get off to that hot start. But, last year in AAA, over 349 at-bats. He slashed 321, 378, 507 good for an 855 OPS. He's a guy that has slid around the infield, but it's also like based on need. I mean, the Brewers had, the Orioles had people at those positions. So it was kind of like, if he needed to come up for whatever reason, but right now for the Brewers, you do have a shortstop in Willy Adames, but it's another guy who could potentially be on the trading block. Definitely some rumors swirling around that. If it doesn't happen before the season, something that could definitely happen in season, and you could have Joey Ortiz go straight into that shortstop, but for the time being, you could have him bounce around. Just because he's a utility man now doesn't mean he can't find his spot within the infield. And for a guy that has, very high, barrel rates, just a very patient, very good hitter, everybody was just like, if this prospect wasn't named, Jackson Holliday or Colton Cowser, Heston Kjerstad, Kobe Mayo, Grayson Rodriguez, or Gunnar Henderson, the players of that ilk, that this was just a complete meh whiff of a trade. I saw a lot of things of, they didn't have to give up any of their top 5 prospects. You had Joey Ortiz listed this year as your 6th prospect, so it's not like he was too far off. And like I said, just definitely a highly touted prospect. I think a lot of this comes from the fact that a lot of people are just, Pirates fans, and, if they're not complete, kind of prospect junkies like myself, and I'm not even on the level of some people that are Pirates prospect fans, but you don't really know a lot about players in other organizations. I'm lucky enough that I am friends with Eric Garfield, which obviously if it's Birdland, you watch his stuff. Yes, he does, look at the Pirates prospects in Bradenton, also in the Florida Complex League, but is, an O's fan and follows them as well. It's kind of nice that, you got Sarasota and Bradenton right there. And just a guy that really likes prospects, but I knew who DL Hall was. I knew who Joey Ortiz was. I've known who they've been for the past couple of years, and very good ball players. So yeah, if you don't know, a certain number of people, outside of the ones that I named, like the big ones, that if it wasn't one of them, then this is not like a great return. I did read an article from The Athletic earlier, and, giving grades. I did see some people giving like a C+ to the Brewers in this trade. Most of them was like around a B. But if you looked on social media, most people would say that it was a D or an F, just because they weren't able to get those high-end guys. But I do think this will and should be a good, trade for the Brewers. Obviously going to miss Corbin Burnes, but the return that they got was actually pretty good in my estimation for a guy with, that last year of arbitration, 1 year of control, and kind of going for it this season. And the last thing I got was kind of based upon just the prospect rankings in general. And it's like, okay, well, you do a minor league news and brews on the Pirates system. Why don't you do your own, top 30 for the Pittsburgh Pirates? And my answer back to them is that, Baseball America exists. Baseball Prospectus is one that I follow a lot. Had Jeffrey, Paternostro on just a couple weeks ago. It's a site and an organization, a company that I respect. And then you have MLB Pipeline, you have Fangraphs, and you have so many of these that have more contacts than I could ever imagine. The scouts, the developmental, people within the development departments for each organization, and it's also their job. This is me doing this as a fan, and just trying to give you some insight from a fan perspective with a little bit of that education into that, because it's a passion of mine. But I really don't see the point of me doing, a top 30 list when all of the research, or I shouldn't say all of the research, but probably the majority of the research that I would be doing would be coming from, those sites those sites I listed and other ones. So it would really just be almost like a duplication of those lists. Obviously I do have, some people that I talk to within the Pirates minor league system, from the broadcasters to some players to some scouts, and different stuff, but it wouldn't be, the same amount of information that those sites are able to pull. And, I just would rather go to them and see, their scouting reports on the players, their takes on the players, and speak to them, as opposed to just trying to, come up with something that would be almost like somewhat of a carbon copy of their lists. Everybody knows me by now. When I start doing something in a first segment, I go on rants, I go on little vents, end up going a little bit longer than, I really expected to go on that, because the title of this, piquing my interest, it's the Pirates prospects that I'm really kind of focusing in on. I said I don't do my own top 30 list, but I do have, a list of prospects that I'm really looking forward to seeing this year, for one reason or another. Like I said, when I used to blog, I would do one of these every year, at least for the past 2 years. And so I'm decided to kind of do this in the podcasting form, because it's my more natural form now, and talk about those. So just wanted to go over, the articles do still exist on it's Steel City Pirates now. Gary Morgan, really good friend of mine, still they still exist on there. It was under the Inside the Bucs Basement umbrella, but back in 2022, the players that kind of piqued my interest, and a lot of these happened for just usually kind of the same reasons, whether it's I haven't really seen much of the player, if at all, from the previous season, so just really excited to see them, get their first taste or get more of a taste of professional baseball. It could be somebody that was acquired in a trade, either, late in the season or during the off season. So just a lot of different reasons. Or it's a guy that, you haven't, you really expected maybe more from them, but they haven't performed up to the level yet, and you're maybe looking for that breakout season. So back in 2022, before that season started, the list of players that kind of piqued my interest were Anthony Solometo, Alexander Mojica, Bubba Chandler, Solomon McGuire, and Kyle Nicholas. Solometo fell into that, haven't seen the guy yet, just because he had been drafted and, didn't really get to see him pitch. So Mojica was a guy that I expected more from, was looking to see if he could bounce back. Bubba Chandler, it was kind of just like wanted to see, at that point in time, how he was going to balance the hitting and the pitching. And was really looking forward to and had a trip planned down to Bradenton that year, so was going to get to see him play. Solomon McGuire, an international signing, signed very young out of Australia, had a decent amount of injuries, didn't get much playing time, and really wanted to see how he would perform. And then Kyle Nicholas obviously was from the Jacob Stallings trade, so I wanted to see how he would perform within the system. In 2023, Thomas Harrington kind of fell into the Anthony Solometo, category, because really didn't get to see him pitch, but was also excited to see him pitch. Scott Randall, a guy that a lot of Pirates, even prospect fans, may not remember. He came over when we traded Diego Castillo, but unfortunately he was out of all of 2023 with an undisclosed injury. Still didn't get to see him play. Tamar Johnson, that one I said was an easy one, and I think it was, maybe I called it cheating when I was making the list, just because, but I was excited and I wanted to see how he would move throughout the system. Unfortunately, started the year with a little bit of an injury. Then was able to finally get going in Bradenton, promoted to Greensboro. So he could be a guy, he's not piquing my interest as much anymore, but still excited to see him play in 2024. I had Jared Jones on there. Sometimes I pick guys because I thought I was going to get to see him pitch more, because I go to, more Altoona Curve games than, any other affiliate within the Pirates, organization. I got a pretty quick promotion to Indianapolis. Luckily, I have MILB TV, so was able to see a decent amount. I made sure I was watching a decent amount of his starts out there, but just kind of wanted to see how he would develop throughout the upper minors. And then finally, Malcolm Nunez, just because the Pirates haven't had a first baseman developed throughout their system or in their system since Kevin Young. Josh Bell did have some really good times with the Pirates, but never for like a full season. So just wanted to see, Malcolm Nunez, extremely young, and just wanted to see how he would perform. And this is just another one of those where it's like, unfortunately, didn't get to see him as much. Went on the IL on May 27th and didn't return to the Indianapolis Indians. Did do some rehabbing throughout the lower levels and up, but didn't come back until, August 8th, and really didn't have that great of a season. So he gets to go on my list again for 2024. Malcolm Nunez, still going to be 23 years old on March 9th, so a little over a month from now. As I said, last year in AAA, 271 plate appearances, slashed 237, 314, 357, with only a 69 WRC plus, struck out at a 23% K rate, 7% base on ball rate. Did have the 208 ISO. So that's like one thing that, he does still have some of that power. But looking at it, and I've talked about this before, in 2022 was seen as a very hitter-friendly ballpark in AA. He got 350 plate appearances before he came over in the Jose Quintana deal with Johan Oviedo. Slash 255, 360, 463, a 110 WRC plus, 20.3% K rate, a 13.7 base on ball rate. And here's the thing is, I mean, when he came over to Pitt, when he came over here and he came over to Altoona, when he came to Pittsburgh, he had 126 plate appearances, so obviously a smaller sample size. 286, 381, 476, so actually had a better on-base percentage, better average, better slugging percentage. WRC plus went from 110 to 134. Strikeout rate went up a little bit from 20.3 to 21.4, but you saw the base on ball rate stay almost exactly the same, 13.7, 13.5. Just want to see if he can stay healthy this season. Definitely want to see if he's a guy that you have Rowdy Tellez there on a 1-year deal. You brought in some guys on some minor league, the NRIs, the non-roster invitee to spring training. But realistically is a guy that I want to see a full season at Indianapolis and kind of see what he can do. Number 2 on my list is Sung-Chae Chang, a guy that I've watched since his time in Bradenton, have always really liked him. Added to the 40-man during this offseason. We've seen, Ben Cherington, when he adds guys to the 40-man, usually, you will see them before the end of the season the majority of the time. So, I mean, lit it up in Greensboro. 254 plate appearances / 308, 406, 575 with a 163 WRC plus, striking out 18.5% of the time, walking 13.8% of the time. But you almost knew it wasn't completely sustainable. The 206 ISO with 9 home runs in Greensboro. Talked about Greensboro a bunch of times, the bandbox, and even within, the whole Sally League, just a lot of smaller stadiums. So really wanted to see what would happen to him when he came to Altoona. Had 281 plate appearances there. Saw everything, kind of fall. It's a 251 average, 304 on-base percentage, 352 in the slugging, an 80 WRC plus. K rate stayed right around the same, 18.5 in Greensboro, 18.9 in Altoona. Did see the base on ball rate drop 13.8% to 6% in Altoona. Just really want to see, I know that there's times when guys, when they get elevated up to another level, they do struggle. But when they come back that next year, they can get off to, a better start and just, get more comfortable at that level. I mean, obviously the Pirates see something in him added to, the 40-man. But it's just a guy that, I'm going to be keeping that extra eye on. So maybe it's not even like piquing my interest. Maybe it's guys I will keep an eye on. And the next 2 guys are kind of a package deal. I usually do these in 5s, but I'm going to cheat here a little bit and give you 2 guys together. First one is Esther Suero, the 18-year-old outfielder that came over in the Rich Hill G-Man Choi trade to the Padres. The second guy also came over in that trade, Jackson Wolf. And so, for one, Jackson Wolf is a former Mountaineer. West Virginia is my baseball team, so maybe that's cheating even more on this one. But for, the first one, Esther Suero, it was Jackson Wolf, Alfonso Rivas, who they just basically needed a first baseman, who wasn't going to kill them defensively at that point in time, and Suero. So it's Jackson Wolf, Alfonso Rivas, Esther Suero. Suero, he was in the Complex League for the Padres. When he came over to the Pirates, he was in the Florida Complex League. Definitely didn't get a ton of plate appearances last year. For the Padres, he had 160 plate appearances, / 216, 306, 345, with a 65 WRC plus. had a 30.6% K rate, obviously not great. Did have the 10% base on ball rate. Very small sample size when he came over to the Pirates. 58 plate appearances. You saw the average stay around the same. He was a 217. Saw the on-base percentage go from 306 to 379. Saw a little bit of the power go away, not really much, 345 to 326. WRC plus jumped to 99, so just a little bit below average. And then the good part is the base on ball rate doubled, and that went to 20%, and the K rate dropped by 10% down to 20.7%. So really kind of excited to see what he can do. Where he'll start, whether it's going to be back in the Florida Complex League, if he's going to be, up in Bradenton this year. If he isn't right away, then definitely he will be there by the end of the season. And then Wolf, the one thing, a lot of people said is, he did have an MLB appearance for the Padres, but prior to the deal, he was in Double-A for the Padres. Was also in Double-A in Altoona for the Pirates. The big thing, is that everything kind of stayed fairly similar. He had a 4.08 ERA for the Padres, a 4.25 ERA in Altoona, a 1.09 WHIP with the Padres, great. A 1.17 WHIP for Altoona, also still really good. The one thing that did happen when he came over here, we saw a drop in his K rate. He had a rate of over 10 batters per 9 innings. When he was with the Padres, it went down to just a little bit over 7 batters per 9 when he was with the Pirates in Altoona. So that's kind of something to look on, but definitely want to see a lot more of him. So I'm going to call that number 3 together. This one, number 4, might surprise some of you guys who listen to this podcast a lot. Going to be Jack Brannigan. He is a non-roster invitee. Don't ever question his defensive ability, and don't question a ton about his offensive prowess. The big thing for me is the K rate, and I'll definitely get to that. Is that in Bradenton this past season, 201 plate appearances / 253. 398, 451, had the 26.9% K rate, 15.9% base on ball rate, 7 home runs, a 135 WRC plus, was having a really good year down there. Exploded when he went to Greensboro, which is something, that was why I kind of just want to see this guy in Altoona and see, what's real and what's not. But he had 173 plate appearances in Greensboro / 299, 382, 605 on the slugging, 12 home runs. The thing for me, though, is the 33.5% K rate. Saw that jump, almost a full 7%, while the base on ball rate went down a little bit, 12.1%. I mean, numbers go up in Greensboro. It's just kind of something that happens. And I guess, the guy who I have 5th here is another guy which, want to see that from Greensboro to Altoona, and it's Jace Bowen. Jace is a player that I really, really like. He had 493 plate appearances in Greensboro, 257, 333, 469, a 117 WRC plus, which when you see an astronomical number like Jack Brannigan had of a 159, what Sung Chae Chang had, the 117 is not great, especially when he had 23 home runs to go with 24 stolen bases. The K rate, not super high, 24.5%. Base on ball rate down below 10% though at 7.1. Only a small cup of coffee in Altoona. 33 plate appearances / 219, 242, 438 with 77 WRC plus. K rate, once again, not terrible for a guy that's going to be showing some power, 21.2%. Only a 3% base on ball rate, but like I said, extremely small sample size. In the larger sample size, 7.1%, would like to see that come up a little bit. But these are probably two guys that I'm hopefully going to be seeing a lot in Altoona, and those are the guys that I have my eyes on and are piquing my interest.
A pitcher of beer, a pitcher of beer, let's order another pitcher of beer. That pitcher of beer should come over here. I love that pitcher of beer.
Obviously going long on this one again because of how long the first segment went. I do apologize. Gonna get this in under 40 minutes because we're 30 minutes of Bucs here and got to do that. I already gone longer than I expected. So for the beer reviews here, luckily I was able to go out for a friend's birthday. Not this weekend, obviously, with the sick kiddo, but this past weekend, met him and his wife up at Monaca Brewing Company. Took the kiddo before he got sick up there, and I only had 3 beers. Usually I have 4 beers, but I'm going to give you 3 beer reviews. Monaca Brewing, Monaca, PA. First one was the Hazy Casey, obviously a hazy IPA. 5% ABV. Give that one a 450. Knock it down to 400. And then there was Lucifer's Landing, which was a blueberry fruited IPA. Not something I've really had before, but it had and I don't really even like blueberries, but it had not an overwhelming flavor to it. It was very light, refreshing. So I kind of had to judge this one on the weighted based on batting average a little bit. Gave it a 450 as well, but only took it down to a 425 because usually fruited stuff is not my thing. And this time it really was. And the last one I had to try because I will try anything with an umlaut. And this is the Schmee Vienna Lager, also 5%. Give that one a 450. Knock it down to 425. Would normally knock it down to 400, but because it has an umlaut, it only gets the 0.025 deduction on the weighted based on batting average scale. Appreciate you guys that are checking in and listening to this. Appreciate you sticking around for the whole show. Appreciate that, you're still downloading this and listening to it. Even though it's a little late, we'll do my best to get this out back on time because that's the one thing in the podcasting world is consistently. I know some of you probably do look forward to this, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Hopefully it's coming to you on Saturday morning.